Emily, thank you so much for this comment. You are absolutely 100% right. This is one of the reasons that I push permaculture design so hard, and I think it is going to be not only highly applicable, but incredibly beneficial in the coming months and years. As the American imperialist state, the oligarchy, the inequality is dismantled in this country. Unfortunately, right now we are going through a process where lots of people are suffering as fascism is attempting to rise, but it will not succeed because we, the people, are in the process of stopping it, and we will stop it. But afterward, we have to build back something better. I said this in another video, but as a permaculture person, I would much rather retrofit a system. I would much rather reform a system than dismantle it completely, tear it all to the ground. Retrofitting is always more resource efficient, causes less suffering, uses far fewer resources. We expend far less labor than revolution. Revolutions result in the deaths of the most vulnerable. They result in the highest amount of suffering for the most vulnerable folks in that society. Unfortunately, we have had an America that is controlled by the oligarchy, corporate interest, foreign interest, and even the majority of the elected officials who say that they want the kind of social reforms that would help us create an America of, by, and for the people. They have not actually done the work of attempting to retrofit or reform the system that we have. Not in a long time. We had the Voting Rights Act, which was an excellent example of reforming a system in order to increase equity and justice. Now we're watching the uber conservative 6 justices on the Supreme Court with their Christo-fascist and white supremacist agenda attempt to dismantle voting rights, attempt to dismantle civil rights. They've already eroded rights for women, and they will attempt to do that even further. Before I read your quote and talk about why I think it's so entirely relevant, I will say, if we're looking at permaculture retrofitting, a solution to the Supreme Court would be to expand the number of seats, not to abolish the court entirely, but to remodel it in a way that actually serves the American people, serves the rule of law, and not a Christo-fascist agenda. So Emily left their comment in response to a video where I was expressing frustration over how the same folks who didn't want to vote for Kamala Harris don't want to actually do anything, just play cosplay revolutionary from their sofa and bitch that the rest of us aren't stopping this madness. And honestly, I'm kind of okay with that. We need everybody to join the party. We need everybody who is willing and has resources and experience and expertise and labor that they can give to the pro-democracy movement to come and join us. We don't actually need 100% of the American people to do that work. Now, I've talked extensively in the past about the 3.5% rule. That doesn't mean 3.5% of the population shows up to a protest on a given day and like Donald Trump steps down. It doesn't mean that 3.5% of the population shows up to some kind of nationwide event and like the fascists just all go poof into smoke, you know? I always like to explain that the 3.5% rule is not proscriptive, it is descriptive. When Dr. Erica Chenoweth looked at nonviolent resistance movements in the past, who was successful in toppling an authoritarian regime? Who was successful at stopping a would-be dictator or a dictator who was already in place? It was the societies where at least 3.5%, like that was the threshold, 3.5% of the population was engaged in strategic, sustained resistance over a long period of time. They were pulling all of the levers, they were taking all of the actions, they were doing all of the things that meant that that regime could not continue to operate. They weren't just showing up to a protest. It's about sustained resistance. It's about being non-cooperative with the regime. It's about taking proactive steps to erode the pillars of support under the regime. And it's about not giving up 7-8 months in. It's about saying, hey, this is a long haul. We understand we have some heavy lifting to do, and we're willing to do that on behalf of our children, on behalf of this society, on behalf of democracy. Yeah, let's go, motherfucker. Let's do it. We're in. It doesn't require everybody. It just requires at least 3.5% of the population. Way back, I don't know, it was February when I started talking about this concept. For me, it was so encouraging because I think we can have this false idea that it might take 50% of us to stop this. In permaculture, we say slow, small solutions. Small solutions actually matter. regular, ordinary people contributing to the sustained resistance, refusing to comply, refusing to buckle under fascism, continuing to exercise their rights and speak out against what is happening, continuing to advocate for and support the most vulnerable that the regime is targeting. That is all really good and necessary work, and it's work that really matters. It really, really makes a difference. Those small things that you do, they absolutely add up. That is the kind of sustained resistance that we're talking about. It doesn't actually require us to convert MAGA to our side. It doesn't require us to cajole and motivate doomers to get off the sofa. But it is a heavy lift. It does mean that we have to give what we can give. We're going to have to make sacrifices. I know so many of us already are, but we're going to have to make more sacrifices for as long as it takes to stop this madness. But let me read this quote that Emily referenced here. It's from Bill Mollison, who's one of the founders of permaculture design. Now, Mollison founded permaculture back in the 70s. I discovered it in the 90s. And this whole concept of ordinary people can make a real difference, that small changes are cumulative. It's not just you acting on your own. It's the fact that you're making a choice here and a choice here and a choice here. That all adds up, but also other people around you are adding their small contributions. Those small solutions all have a cumulative effect. That's really important when we're looking at permaculture design and how we arrange our, food forest system. But it's also true when it comes to society at large and when it comes to social justice movements. And it's so important to understand it's not these big, sweeping, sexy fantasies of revolution that actually bring about social change. And honestly, when we look at history and those kind of big cinematic revolutions, what you have after that revolution is no planning, no structure, no follow through. And so you end up with this power vacuum. You end up with a situation where the society has been destabilized. And that's a prime time for narcissists, autocrats, tyrants to come in and seize control. And we often see after a revolution that what you get is a period not of democracy, not of increased freedoms and opportunity, but instead you see a tyrant step in and seize power. So this whole revolutionary fantasy that so many people have on the left, it's not through big revolutions that we're going to care for each other and get ourselves out of this. It's through mutual aid. It's through the small acts of ordinary people coming together and joining hands, joining our power and exercising it as one. So let me read this quote here from Mollison because it so perfectly encapsulates this whole issue. The greatest change we need to make is from consumption to production, even if on a small scale, in our own gardens. If only 10% of us do this, there is enough for everyone. Hence the futility of revolutionaries who have no gardens, who depend on the very system they attack, and who produce words and bullets, not food and shelter. It's us caring for each other in this time. It's us refusing to turn our backs on each other. It's us refusing to bend the knee for fascism and betray the most vulnerable who are being targeted by the regime. It's our decision to make a choice on our own as individuals that we are going to push back. We are not going to sit by and just passively consume the fascist takeover of the United States. We are not going to sit by and let Donald Trump write our future, consuming the terror, the panic, the fear, letting him erode our rights and harm our neighbors. No, we need to be pivoting right now from consumption to production. What can we give? What can we contribute? How can we push back? How can we work to produce a better America? That's what we need to be focusing on right now. And again, that's why I think so much of permaculture is right now so applicable and will be even more so in the future of this country.